hard to explain a rage, you know, of being angry that I was a witness. Because I didn't want to make him angry and make a fight. I wanted to have a good marriage, you know. A few times I'd get up in the middle of the night and finish my watchtower or finish studying for the book study in the bathroom. That was a safe place. I didn't have the nice family and you're bringing your kids to the hall and doing things with people. It felt impossible to be a good witness. If anybody called and asked for Sister Crosby, that was flipping the angry switch to my husband. On a bad day, I did feel sometimes like dying. Or it'd be easier to die. I prayed a lot to just do the right thing. And then I realized why it's in the Lord's Prayer to pray to be forgiving, because you don't always want to forgive the person, but we need to, we have to. And it works when you pray for help about that. Meetings and studying were my lifeline to Jehovah, besides praying. Just made me always feel like a witness. But assemblies were hard because it was just hard telling them. Just going made him angry. A lot of times I never knew what I'd come home to after an assembly or a convention. And I came home as usual. He wasn't there when I came home. There was 30 seconds. He just went in to go and I pulled up and got out of the car. He had been waiting there all day for me because he wanted to come out and say something to the people that dropped me off. Probably not very nice. I think I always felt Jehovah's hand when I came home. Some people might think, well, we'd have a better marriage if I stopped being a witness. Because people stop studying because their husbands are opposed. Well, how do you feel about Jehovah? What do you think? How does he feel? If you depend on Jehovah for the help, he'll give it to you and you'll feel it. It builds your faith. And you know that you just got through something. You can't believe you just did that. It actually happened and you know that he helped you. I continued to be a witness. I could be a witness. It really happened. I've been pioneering for 13 years and I've really enjoyed it. Gotten to study with people and I like talking to people about Jehovah. It really makes you feel good. And even if people aren't nice, they're getting a witness and they have a chance. And who knows what'll happen in the future.
Yes, who knows? We've been listening to the story of Patricia Crosby, as shown in the concluding talk on the second day of this year's Exercise Patience Convention. The theme of the talk is When Persecuted, We Patiently Endure. And to be clear, there are actually 4 stories or 4 testimonials that get shown throughout the talk. And it's a little bit confusing because they chop the testimonials up and mix them in with each other. And I've just decided, for the purposes of brevity, to just feature 2 of the testimonials that I find personally quite interesting, this being one of them. And I've had to kind of piece them together so that we see Patricia Crosby's full story without being distracted by other stories, if that makes sense. And hopefully you can understand why I find Patricia Crosby's story so compelling. What she's describing here is an abusive relationship.
On a bad day, I did feel sometimes like dying. Or it'd be easier to die.
On a bad day, I did feel sometimes like dying, or it would be easier to die. Those are the words, surely, of a woman who is in or has been in an extremely abusive relationship. It's interesting that she doesn't go into detail regarding her husband's rage and how it manifested itself. She talks about him being angry, and specifically angry about her connections with Jehovah's Witnesses. She doesn't talk about how that anger manifested itself. And that's quite an important part of the story to leave out. I mean, I suppose you could argue that there are children in the audience, children of Jehovah's Witness parents, but then the organization isn't too bothered about what they watch or listen to when it comes to the violence in their dramas. So, I don't know, for me personally, at least if we're dealing this from an adult perspective, I feel like there is a lot missing in this story. And ultimately, I cannot help but think of the organization's stance on domestic violence. And I feel like that must be what we're looking at here. We must be, and I can't prove it, but if I had to bet, what we're seeing here is a classic example of a woman who, because of her religion, is trapped in an abusive marriage, because her religion is telling her you cannot divorce your husband unless there is proof of adultery. Adultery is everything. If there's adultery, then you can get divorced. But if there's no proof of adultery, you have to stay married to someone, even if they're being violently abusive towards you. And I've mentioned this Watchtower article before on the channel, but it bears repeating in the context of what we've just seen. It's the Watchtower of December 2018, page 14. Let's read a little bit from paragraphs 17 and 18. Admittedly, there have been instances where an unbelieving husband seems to prove that he is not agreeable to staying with her. He might be extremely physically abusive, even to the point that she feels that her health or life is in danger. He might refuse to support her and the family or severely endanger her spirituality. In such cases, some Christians have personally decided that despite what he might say, the mate is not agreeable to staying together and that a separation is necessary. But other Christians in comparably difficult situations have not. They have endured and tried to work at improving matters. Why? And then if we scroll down to paragraph 18, many loyal Christians have remained with an unbelieving mate under very trying circumstances. They can testify that doing so was worthwhile in a special sense when their mate became a true worshipper. So you have to stay with an unbelieving spouse who is abusive towards you, not just because you don't have any scriptural grounds, is what it's called. You don't have any scriptural basis to leave them if they're not committing adultery against you, but also it might benefit the organization in some way, because who knows, through you putting up with their abuse, like a good Christian sister, it might convince them to become a true worshipper. And then we get an extra Jehovah's Witness who can go around people's doors and flog our literature for us. That's the reasoning that's given here. Absolutely disgraceful and shameful, isn't it? And this teaching is keeping countless men and women in abusive marriages where their very lives are in danger. And notice, before we move on in this talk, another part of this testimonial that we need to talk about.
And then I realized why it's in the Lord's Prayer to pray to be forgiving, because you don't always want to forgive the person, but we need to, we have to. And it works when you pray for help about that.
There we have it again. You've got to be forgiving. Doesn't matter what someone's doing to you. If they're a fellow worshipper, or in this case, if you're married to them, you have to be forgiving towards them. You have to. It's compulsory. They could be abusing you. They could be endangering your very life. But the advice being given here is to forgive them.